You've probably done this without thinking. Standing in your kitchen, cutting into something so ordinary, and within seconds, your eyes start to react. Not slowly, instantly. They water, your breathing shifts. Something in your body responds before you even have time to question it. And most people just wipe their eyes and move on. But here's what's strange. That reaction doesn't stop there. Something else begins, almost immediately, and most people never notice it. Thousands of years ago, this exact reaction wasn't ignored, it was respected, because in ancient Egypt, this same simple food was given daily to the workers who built the pyramids, not as flavor, but as strength. Because when the body was pushed to its limit, and this was one of the few things that seemed to bring it back. And now, modern research is starting to circle back to it again, trying to understand something people already seem to feel. So the real question is, why did something sitting quietly in your kitchen hold that much importance for so many civilizations? And what were they feeling that we stopped paying attention to? That reaction people have around it isn't random. The moment you cut into it, something is released into the air, and your body doesn't hesitate. Your eyes respond, your sinuses begin to open, your breathing subtly shifts, almost like something is moving through you. It's fast, automatic, almost like your body recognizes it before your mind does. But here's the part most people miss. That's only the first layer. If you pay closer attention, there's more happening beneath that first reaction. A slight warmth, a gentle pressure releasing around your face, a feeling that something is clearing, not forcing, just opening. So now the question changes. It's not just why does this happen, but what were people noticing in their bodies that made them trust this reaction? Because they didn't see this as an inconvenience. They saw it as a signal, a sign that something inside the body was responding for a reason. So why did that understanding disappear? Think about it. There aren't many things in your kitchen that can trigger your body this quickly without even being eaten. Just cutting into it is enough. The smell alone carries something sharp, almost penetrating. It reaches your eyes, your nose, your chest, and your body reacts like it's trying to clear something out. Not gently, but with intention. And yet, despite how strong it is, people throughout history didn't avoid it. They moved toward it. They used it during sickness, kept it close during times of weakness, even placed it around the body in ways that might seem unusual today. But here's where it gets even stranger. Because they weren't just using it when they were sick. They were using it before something even started. Which raises a deeper question. What did they understand about this reaction that made them trust it in moments when their body needed support the most? This wasn't random. This was observed, repeated, passed down, and eventually relied on. So what exactly is this thing that your body refuses to ignore? It's the onion. Something you've seen, cut, cooked, almost every day. But that familiar reaction, the watering eyes, the shift in your breath, the sharpness that reaches your face, was never just about cutting food. For thousands of years, people treated it differently. Not as a cure-all, not as something magical, but as something worth keeping nearby. Especially when the body felt weak, when the chest felt heavy, or when the first signs of sickness began to appear. It earned its place slowly, through use, observation, and memory. So maybe the question isn't whether this does something, but whether we've been overlooking something that's been working quietly in the background this whole time. If something about this feels familiar, like your body already knew, subscribe and stay with me. Because what comes next goes deeper than most people realize. long before it became something you casually slice in your kitchen. This was part of something much deeper. In ancient Egypt, onions carried meaning beyond the meal. They were seen as strengthening food, something practical, steady, and sustaining. So when workers were facing long days, heat, and exhaustion, this wasn't treated like a garnish. It was treated like support. This wasn't about taste. It was about sustaining something inside the body when everything else was being drained. And if you imagine that moment, heat pressing down, breathing heavy, energy fading, and then something simple, sharp, grounding, something that made the body feel like it could keep going. You start to understand why it stayed. And it didn't stay in just one place. In early Indian traditions, it was used not for intensity, but for balance. When the body felt overheated or digestion felt stuck, this was used to bring things back into movement. In Chinese practices, it appeared at the very first sign of illness, not after things got worse, but at the moment the body began to feel off, when something needed to be released before it settled deeper. Different cultures, different languages, but the same pattern. And even in biblical times, there's a quiet moment where it appears again, not as medicine, but as memory. During hardship, when people were stripped of comfort, they remembered the foods that once sustained them. Foods that didn't just fill the stomach, but supported the body in a way that stayed with them. And this was one of them, which raises something deeper. Why did so many civilizations, separated by distance, language, and belief, all come back to the same simple thing? What were they feeling it consistently enough that it became impossible to ignore? Over time, that trust turned into practice, not complicated systems, not measured doses. Simple things done consistently when breathing felt tight. People used it close to the body, sometimes warmed and wrapped, sometimes placed near the chest. The goal wasn't comfort alone. It was to bring warmth, sharpness, and circulation into an area that felt heavy. When the throat felt rough, they would often combine it with honey. The honey softened the sharpness, while the onion brought that clearing sensation people were looking for. And as it moved down, there was often a noticeable change. Less resistance, less irritation, almost like something was being coated, while something else was being cleared. In some homes, during times of sickness, it wasn't even eaten at first. It was just placed nearby, left in the room, quietly, because people believed, or maybe observed, that the air itself began to feel different. Heavier at first, then clearer. And whether every part of that belief was correct or not, the pattern stayed. Because the body kept responding, not dramatically, but enough for people to keep coming back to it. Which leads to something important. These practices weren't preserved because they sounded good. They were preserved because something was happening that people could feel now. Only recently, science has started asking the same question: what is actually happening here? Because that sharp reaction, that immediate shift in your eyes, your breath, it's not random. It's chemical. When you cut into an onion, it releases sulfur-based compounds into the air. And this is where something interesting happens. Because what you feel actually matches what's happening inside your body. One of them is so reactive that it travels instantly into your eyes, triggering a response designed to protect and flush. That tearing? It's not weakness. It's your body actively responding, clearing, adjusting. And that same family of compounds does something similar inside the body, not through irritation, but through activation. They interact with pathways linked to detoxification, helping the body process and move things out more efficiently. which connects directly to that feeling of clearing people described long ago. And then there's something quieter, less immediate, but deeper. A compound called quercetin. It doesn't create a strong reaction. You won't feel it instantly. But over time, it begins to influence how the body handles inflammation, how blood flows through smaller vessels, how the immune system responds under pressure. So what ancient people described as opening, lightness, support, now has a different explanation, but it leads to the same place. The body wasn't reacting randomly. It was responding to something structured, predictable, real, and without needing the language for it, they learned to trust that response. So instead of leaving this as a question, we explored it for you, not in theory, but by actually using it consistently for a few days, paying attention to what the body does when something this simple is used with intention. And what we found wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, but consistent enough that a pattern started to appear. Day 1. The reaction is the strongest here. As soon as it's prepared, your eyes respond, your nose opens. Your body feels it immediately. It might feel sharp, even slightly uncomfortable. But underneath that, there's movement, like something is being stirred. Day 2. The intensity softens, just a little. Your body still reacts, but not as abruptly. Breathing may feel a bit clearer, especially in the morning or after eating. It's subtle, easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Day 3. This is where most people notice a shift. Not dramatic, but noticeable. There's less heaviness, especially around the chest and sinuses. Digestion may feel more active, more responsive, like your system is starting to engage instead of resist. You may also notice something subtle in the morning, a difference in how your breathing feels when you wake up. Less resistance, like your system did some work overnight without you noticing. And here's what surprised most people. It wasn't just their breathing that changed. Something else started to feel different too. Day 4. Something begins to stabilize. The sharpness you felt at the beginning starts to feel more familiar. Less like a reaction, more like a process. Your body isn't fighting it anymore, it's working with it. Day 5. There's often a sense of lightness here. Breathing feels easier, not forced, just natural. Energy may feel more steady, without sudden dips, like your system is conserving instead of compensating. But something else starts happening here. The change starts feeling less like a reaction and more like balance. Day 6. At this point, the changes are quieter, but deeper. Your body feels more balanced, less reactive to small things. And that original sharp response, now it feels almost purposeful. Day 7. By now, you're no longer reacting to it. You're noticing with it. The signals are clearer. What once felt strong now feels supportive. And the most interesting part? Nothing new was added. You just returned to something simple and allowed your body to respond the way it was designed to. By this point, it should feel simple, because it is. No complex formulas, no precise measurements. Just a few ways this has been used, consistently, over time. The most direct way? Raw. Cut it fresh and let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. That pause matters, because once it's exposed to the air, something begins to activate. Then take a small amount, just a few slices, or a spoonful if finely chopped. Not forcing it, just letting your body respond. Another way, especially when the throat feels irritated, combine it with something naturally soothing, most commonly raw honey. Finely chop the onion, add a spoon of honey, and let it sit for 30 to 60 minutes. A liquid will slowly form. Thick, slightly sharp, but easier to take. A small spoon of this, once or twice a day, was traditionally used when the chest felt heavy or the throat felt dry and strained. And if the raw intensity feels like too much, there's a gentler approach. Lightly warmed, not fried, not cooked down, just softened. You can do this by placing sliced onion in a pan with a small amount of water on low heat for a few minutes, or pouring hot, not boiling water over thin slices and letting it sit like a simple infusion. The goal isn't to cook it completely, just to reduce the sharpness while keeping it active. The key in all of this isn't the method, it's the consistency. Because what you saw over those 7 days didn't come from doing more. It came from doing something simple, repeatedly, and letting the body do what it already knows how to do. Even something this simple needs to be approached with awareness, because strong reactions, even natural ones, don't affect everyone the same way. Some people may notice digestive sensitivity, a feeling of heaviness, or mild discomfort in the stomach, especially when raw. Others might feel irritation in the throat, or a bit too much intensity in the beginning. That's not something to ignore. It's something to adjust. Start small. Let your body respond before increasing anything, because more isn't what creates the effect here. Consistency does. And one more thing. If you're already dealing with a condition or taking medication that affects your blood, digestion, or blood sugar, it's important to stay aware of how your body reacts. This isn't a replacement for medical care. It's something traditional that may support the body, but doesn't replace proper guidance when it's needed. So the goal isn't to push through reactions, it's to notice them. Because the same sensitivity that tells you this is too much is also the sensitivity that tells you when something is working with your body instead of against it. So now, the next time you stand in your kitchen and cut into an onion, that reaction won't feel as random. You'll notice it differently. The way your eyes respond, the way your breathing shifts. Not as an inconvenience, but as a signal. Because something so simple has been quietly used, trusted, and passed down across generations, across cultures. Not because people were told to believe in it, but because they felt something real in their own bodies. Maybe that understanding hasn't disappeared. Maybe it's just been overlooked. And the most interesting part in all of this may not be what the onion does. It may be how familiar the response feels, as if this was never new, just remembered. So here's something to consider. If you're ready, take this as a simple 7-day challenge. Not perfectly, not intensely, just consistently, the way you've seen here, and then come back and tell us what you noticed. Was it the same? Or did your body show you something different? Something we didn't even mention? Because that's the part that matters most. Not just what's been written, but what's still being discovered. We're genuinely curious how this goes for you. Because this is how old knowledge comes alive again, not only through books, but through what people notice in their own bodies. And if something in you is starting to question, to explore, to look at simple things differently, subscribe. Because in the next videos, we go deeper into the things people stopped paying attention to and what they might still be doing inside the body.